everywhere. GBS.
The Rwanda-UK deportation, that's the story we are going to start about with today. As our story comes from the UK, where Rishi Sunak recently won a battle where the British parliamentary finally passed the Rwanda bill. It is a controversial law. It allows the UK to deport the asylum seekers, packing them off to Rwanda, a country in the Central Eastern Africa. Good afternoon, this is the ambassador. With me, your ambassador, Jennifer Macau. The British Parliament passed this law. Now it wants the monarch's approval, and when King Charles III signs it, then it will be law and it will come into force. So what does this law really mean? What does the Rwanda bill mean? Why is it controversial? How will it work? And how will it help Rishi Sunak? To make sense of this bill, we'll use a metaphor. Do you know of a scarecrow? It is usually a figure of a model made of straw, shaped like a human, and put on a farm. But what is the scarecrow's purpose? As the name suggests, it is to scare away crows. It looks like a human being. The hope is that the crow will think it is a person and believe it is dangerous and stay away. And the straw figure acts as a deterrent. It deters and discourages crows from landing in the farm. That is the purpose of the scarecrow. Now moving on, and that exactly is what Rwanda UK bill is. A deterrent with no real power, but something they will hope will keep the immigrants away. And here it's how it works. The Rwanda bill says that immigrants can be deported, not all illegal immigrants, just people who arrive from a safe country like France. Migrants often enter the UK through the France after crossing into the English Channel on small boats. Now, everyone who's entered the UK this way from France is eligible for deportation. Illegal migrants, that's about 52,000 people. They can't be sent to Rwanda without having their cases heard in court. So far, the refugees got approached British courts. They asked the court for the asylum, but they were not given any more. Even if a refugee case is genuine, it will be Rwanda's call to make. The UK is washing off its hands of the matter. Now, it's on the surface. The law sounds like a thief. Everyone who enters illegally will be kicked out. No court hearings, no exceptions. But think about this for a moment. 52,000 people is no joke. Imagine having to round up many migrants, then putting them on flights without hurting them in the process and making sure they are medically fit to fly. Also simultaneously fighting off legal challenges from lawyers and representatives of these migrants. How fast do you think UK can accomplish that for 52,000 people? Let me show you some figures. In fact, the maximum number of people that Britain deported in 1 year was about 15,000. 15,000 people in a year was deported, and that was way back in the year 2012. And since then, the number has decreased about 5,000 in a year. That is how many people they are able to deport. Even if Rishi Sunak manages to bring deportation back to Rwanda, 15,000, it will take him 3.5 months to send the migrants to Rwanda. And these are 52,000 presently in Britain. It will take him 3.5 years. Meanwhile, more keep coming. Last year, almost 30,000 migrants came by the English Channel. So do you do the math? Rwanda's plan doesn't really work unless, of course, people stop coming in. That if they are too scared to come into the UK in the first place, if the channel crossing stop, if the inflow is lower than the deportation, only then will the UK illegal migration problem end. And that could say its real purpose of the Rwanda bill. It is not so much about sending people in African country. It is about scaring the people who are thinking about entering the UK. Now, Rishi Sunak has been given permission to put a scarecrow, and this plan has already been in motion. Let's watch.
We are ready. The first flight will leave in 10 to 12 weeks. Now, of course, that is later than we wanted. But we have always been clear that processing will take time.
Before I came here, he said that, the sentiment.
The first place will leave in 20 weeks, which means July. It is still a few months away. But look at the impact of this asylum. Let's watch.
Before I came here, he said that, they sent me in Rwanda. I never come here.
Would you have come to the UK if you'd have known you could end up in Rwanda?
Never. Never.
Do you think it will stop other people coming now?
Yeah. Yeah. I say to all asylum, don't come into.
So it seems to be working already, acting as a deterrent. And if actually continues, then Sunak might succeed in bringing immigration numbers down. But we will not know for sure until the first flight takes off, until July at least. So we have to wait and watch. But Rishi Sunak did not win just that. He also won something else. He won a major political battle. His flagship immigration law was passed and then has happened just before the election. Now we know that Sunak is deeply unpopular. His party is set to lose next election, so if he can get even one symbolic flight off the ground to Rwanda, he might win back some votes for his party. Politics, after all, is all about emotions and messaging, then facts or effectiveness. Now Sunak, a new election gimmick. What about the other side of the story? What about Rwanda? Are they getting millions in turn to take the refugees? Well, they have already received 290 million pounds, and they'll get another 100 million, at least plus 20,000 pounds for each migrant they are taking, and 120 pounds after just 300 migrants reach Rwanda. Sunak office has refused to make the final bill public, but Rwanda is definitely making a fortune, thanks to the British taxpayers. So the African country might be the only real winner in this story. Tragedy struck Kenya as 45 lives were claimed by floods in Mahimahiu, central Kenya, with fears of the death toll rising. The aftermath revealed scenes of devastation, with cars submerged and debris littering of the landscape. The Kenya Red Cross rushed to the aid of these affected, highlighting the severity of the situation through the latest catastrophe, adding to a grim tally, with over 140 lives lost to heavy rains and flooding in the recent weeks. The impact extended beyond Kenya, with neighboring East African countries also grappling with the nature's fury. Susan Nganga with more.
This is the reality of some, if not most, Kenyans. The country woke up to the saddening news that not 1, not 10, but 45 people killed in floods in the central Kenya's Mai Mahiu area after a dam burst early on today. Pictures and videos posted on the X accounts, the Kenya Red Cross and the highway authorities showed scenes of the aftermath of the flooding, with broken trees and cars stuck among logs and mud.
And during our response, we were able to rescue some members within the community, about 109 whom have been admitted at our various hospitals within Naivasha. And we have been able to help the community members also in the retrieval of fatalities within the trade, since it started from above the hills, that side, and it continued up to the way connecting the Narok Highway Road, where we have received some fatalities on the other side. But
zaidi ya mili karibu 20 na tumepata mpaka ya watoto, lakini hatujui idadi ni ngapi sababu bado watu ni wengi sana ambao hawajapatikana.
Quite a number of people have been taken to the Naivasha Sub-County Hospital, while a good number are being treated at my within this vicinity.
Usiku tukiwa tumelala ndio tulisikia mgurumo mkubwa sana wa maji. Hiyo maji imeosha nyumba za watu walikuwa wamelala wamebebwa.
Trees are down, their bodies, they are still looking for more bodies are here. it's just sad. It is a sad, sad moment for us here.
The latest deaths bring the toll from heavy rains and flooding since last month to more than 140. These scenes are also reflected in the capital Nairobi, where more than 40 people are believed to have died after the Nairobi River burst its banks. This isn't just in Kenya. Eastern African countries haven't been exempted from Mother Nature's fury, with dozens more killed and hundreds of thousands displaced by intense downpours in other East African countries, including Tanzania and Burundi.
Anywhere because the water was already everywhere. We came here where there wasn't that much water yet, and we built a long platform according to the height of the water and covered it with tarpaulins.
East Africa was also hit by record floods during the last rainy season in the late 2023. Scientists say climate change is causing more intense and frequent extreme weather events.
Well, quite a catastrophe. We hope for a respite in all these floodings and the environmental changes that seem to wreak havoc in Africa and the world at large. Now, moving on, the Gabonese delegates concluded their mission in the National Dialogue on Saturday, that is April 28th, marking a significant step towards restoring civilian rule following the last year coup. The talks aim to lay the groundwork for the future of Gabon postponing transition, with discussions spanning from a range of critical topics. The much-anticipated report from the forum gave clearance for the ruling General Brice Oligui Nguema to contest in the presidency in the upcoming polls at the end of the transition period. Here,
Gabonese delegates taking part in the National Dialogue completed their mission on Saturday, April 28, with their talks sought to lay the groundwork for restoring civilian rule. Gabon entered a period of transition after a coup last year. The forum's highly anticipated report clears ruling General Brice Oligui Nguema to vie for presidency in the polls to be held at the end of the transition.
Gabon is not cut off from the world. We are part of an international environment, and international legislations are against suspending political parties.
It proposes a strong presidential regime and a 7-year term for the president. Participants kept another controversial proposal, suspending political parties pending the issuance of stricter political rules. Selected military officials, politicians, civil society members, youth leaders, traditional rulers, and members of the clergy took part in the National Dialogue, which kicked off on April 2nd. For now, the one that made it to the report are still mere recommendations, as the report will be handed to the president of the transition on April 30th.
Well, we wish Oligui Nguema all the best. He seems to be pulling through after the coup. Now, moving on, the decision by the Ministry of Education to announce the postponement of school reopening from 29th April to 6th May due to the heavy rains in Kenya, just few hours after the reopening time, has faced a lot of criticism from parents and education stakeholders. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu commented about 1 a.m. on Monday, stating that the government had pushed the school opening dates for a week due to the ongoing heavy rains across the country. Here is more.
As the nation grapples with the wrath of nature, the halls of learning stand empty, their doors closed not by choice, but by the unforgiving force of the elements. The Ministry of Education has come under fire for its 11th hour decision to delay reopening of schools by 1 week. The announcement, made by Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu in the early hours of Monday morning, has left many parents and education stakeholders frustrated and disappointed. postponement of learning by the Ministry of Education due to floods has faced a lot of reactions from parents and education stakeholders, with others calling it a late announcement and others agreeing with the ministry. GBS TV took a spot check at Nairobi, and here is what the residents had to say.
The cycle continues repeating itself. Some areas have been affected by floods continuously, and the government needs to come in and have permanent measures to these problems. So the effects are enormous. The students will be affected. Some of them have already died. You've already heard that some places we receive news every time that people have died, parents have died, people are moved. Some parents have moved to schools for shelter. They are missing food. Red Crosses are trying, but the effects are enormous, and our government needs to be intentional in what they need to do.
Today I was a bit disappointed with the announcement of the CES for education, especially on the postponement of education. I have two different feelings about the same. The first one is that it might have done in good faith for the safety of our children. But secondly, I really feel bad because the announcement came too deep in the night at 1 a.m. where parents had already prepared their children to return to school. Some of them schools had also prepared meals for the receiving children, and also some children boarded buses going to school.
Mi naweza antifai kama watoto mvua si mbaya, lakini hao watoto wanaenda shule mi kwa maoni yangu ni wangojea kwanza mafuriko iishe ndio warudi shule.
In a statement to newsrooms, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu announced the government's decision to postpone school reopening by a week due to widespread flooding. Machogu cited reports from the Ministry of Education and other government agencies indicating severe impacts on schools across the country. He emphasized the need for robust safety measures before resuming classes to protect the lives of the students and the staff. In light of the compelling circumstances, the Ministry of Education has stood firm in its decision to postpone school reopening, prioritizing the safety and well-being of students, teachers, and staff members above all else.
Well, many controversial comments, isn't it? What do you think about it? Please keep your comments coming in as we keep you updated at The Ambassador. And that international news brings us to our first break. There is more coming up for you. Next, we'll talk about Blinken's plea to the Hamas to accept Israel's truce proposal. It is a big deal. And the Consensual Africa financing tripling IDA capacity. The Morocco Africa biggest fair. We are focusing on the sustainability of Morocco. That was the biggest African fair set in the country. We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Stay tuned with us.
Mtu alini-inspire, let's say my husband, because yeye ndo alikuwa hiyo biashara.
So maybe unaweza tuambia hizo challenges zile unapitia, then how do you overcome them?
Na like sometimes hadi nakupeanga do, nilikuwa nimeshikilia kitu yako, ukirudisha do yangu na kupatia.
Kwa hivyo it's like a
inaitangwa small. Unajua, let me tell you, uzuri ya biashara ukiwa umeka useme vitu mingi pamoja. Like ukikosa kuuza sockets, utauza viatu. Ukikosa kuuza viatu, furniture zitaenda. Environment. Mtu au learn environment kwanza unaona. Unajua inaweza kuwa place na kuuza mandazi. So nikiweka mandazi, kutakuwa na place ya kuuzwa mandazi. So they all come.
Yeah.
Mtu anaishi Githurai, unataka kwenda kumwekea Air Force za box. Atanunua saa ngapi?
Na mwenye ananunua anajua mahali zinatoka.
So through the four gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth. And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our sins. He carried our sins. And he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins. And he was put into the tomb and resurrected in 3 days. This is the gospel that we speak. about how Jesus died for our sins, the purpose of Jesus being crucified.
우리 죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back. You are still watching The Ambassador, GBS Global, and we are glad to have you join us today. Now, as we continue, in a diplomatic push to end the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Monday urged the Hamas to promptly accept the Israeli latest proposal for the Gaza truce, describing it as extraordinarily generous during a special meeting at the World Economic Forum held in Riyadh, that is in Saudi Arabia. Here is more.
According to reports, Hamas negotiators are expected to meet with Qatari and Egyptian mediators in Cairo to deliver their response to Israel's phased truce proposal. The proposal presented by Israel over the weekend includes a deal to release fewer than 40 of the approximately 130 hostages believed to be held by the Hamas. And in exchange, Palestinians jailed in Israel would be freed.
We strongly support Israel in its effort to ensure that what happened on October 7th never happens again. But at the same time, we are determined to do everything we can to bring an end to the terrible human suffering that we're seeing every single day in Gaza among children, women, men, who've been caught in a terrible crossfire of Hamas's making. And so maximizing protection of civilians, maximizing the support that gets to them, this is very much our focus. Now, the quickest way to bring this to an end is to get to a ceasefire and the release of hostages. And as you said, there's been an extraordinary effort that's been made, and I really want to thank profoundly our friends from Qatar and Egypt who've been playing an instrumental role in trying to get this ceasefire and release of hostages. A major effort that's been made over the last couple of months to get to that ceasefire, to get the hostages out. And right now, as you said, Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas. They have to decide, and they have to decide quickly. So we're looking to that, and I'm hopeful that they will make the right decision, and we can have a fundamental change in the dynamic.
Additionally, the proposal outlines a second phase of the truce, which involves a period of sustained calm, addressing Hamas' demand for a permanent ceasefire.
In a historic gathering of 19 African heads of state and government in Nairobi, President William Ruto ramped up calls for the increased concessional financing from the World Bank International Development. We are talking of IDA, the rallying call which was made during the International Development Association, the IDA 21, for African Heads of State Summits held at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC in Nairobi, liberating the urgency and the determination. Here is more.
African leaders have today called for rich countries to commit their record contributions to low-interest World Bank facility for developing nations that they rely on to help fund their development and combat climate change. High on the agenda of the International Development Association Nairobi meeting was the pressing need to address the financial strain caused by the high interest rates, which hinders efforts to combat climate change, the transition to low-carbon economy, and adequately finance critical industries such as education, health, and social protection.
Now, more than ever, long-term concessional financing is vital. As many Africans and other developing nations face severe debt crisis, this financial strain hampers our efforts to combat climate change, transition to low carbon economy, and adequately fund essential sectors like education, health, and social protection.
The intersection between climate and debt makes imperative the need to reform the global financial architecture in a way that delivers more resources to our countries to help address the current polycrises affecting our development and that of future generations.
On his part, Ajay Banga, the president of the World Bank, promised to cut down burdensome rules that govern lending nations under IDA to make it more efficient and to deliver funds to borrower nations faster.
We are working to make IDA more efficient. We are working to make it able to deliver faster by cutting burdensome rules, requirements, and redundancies.
If the donors pledge the minimum amount suggested by African leaders, it will be a new high after the last round of fundraising in 2021, which racked $93 billion. IDA lending operates on a 3-year cycle, which is usually preceded by donors making their contributions at a global meeting. According to World Bank, IDA offers low interest rates loans to 75 developing nations around the world, with more than half of them in Africa.
Well, that's a big up for Kenya. Now, moving on, I have an interesting story from Morocco. The drought-hit Morocco has been hosting an international agriculture fair in the city of Meekness this week. We are talking of Siam, focusing on climate resilience and sustainability. Some 70 countries and 1,500. We are talking of exhibitions took part in the 16th edition of the Expo with some 800,000 expected visitors. More than 10 large tents were displayed and witnessed with various agricultural products and services, including vegetables, fruits, fertilizers, irrigation mechanisms from various regions of Morocco as well as abroad. The International Agricultural Exhibition Morocco Siam, organized by the Morocco Ministry of Agriculture, is dubbed as the largest agricultural event in Africa. Spain was welcomed as a special guest of credit as the show runs from April 22nd to 28th.
Successive years of drought prompted the Ministry of Agriculture to implement a set of programs and strategies that were implemented at the regional level. And at the level of our office, the Regional Office for Agricultural Investment in Muluya, it was implemented even at the level of the irrigation networks and also the main canals that supply the region with irrigation water and drinking water as well. There is a severe drought this year which led to a rise in the cost of fodder and a decrease in the production of livestock, such as sheep and goats, which did not reproduce as before.
Well, that's a thumb up for Morocco, the drought-hit nation. And that news brings us to the end of our ambassador, GBS Global News. It's been a pleasure having you on board, joining us to the end. And just to do a recap for you. First of all, we talked about the Rwanda bill, the scarecrow, that was put by Rishi Sunak, believed to solve the immigration controversy. We've seen how it works and who's benefiting most, and Rishi Sunak didn't go empty. He was handed through. Also, with the political apps, we've also talked about Blinken's plea for Hamas to take the Israel peace deal. He called it extraordinary generous and believed this would solve and bring a step solution between the Israel and the Hamas war. This was during a special meeting in the World Economic Forum that was held in Riyadh, that is Saudi Arabia. Well, we hope this one will work. Let's continue as we continue to keep development more developed with more news. Now, not forgetting the Gabonese delegates who concluded the mission in the National Dialogue on Saturday. It seemed to work in favor of the General Brice Oligui Nguema most. How does it work? Will it be successful this time? And will it solve the national political issue? We will keep you updated more as you keep it at The Ambassador. And we've seen about the catastrophes, the Kenya floods, and the school postponements. Lives have been left here and properties have been damaged, structures destroyed. And there's more to the ruin predicament. Maybe it is time for Africa to look for a more permanent solution in these recurring catastrophes. Maybe it is time to find a permanent solution to these recurring catastrophes. And Morocco Agriculture Fair that opened recently in the drought-hit nation biggest in Africa, bringing hope to the nation. Among others, we've talked about this. It has brought solution to the country. It has gathered many diplomats, and we'll hope to see how this will work for Morocco as we all emulate an example from this nation. We'll keep you updated on the latest development as you keep it at The Ambassador. Well, I've been your ambassador, Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at The Ambassador, GBS Global, tomorrow same time, same place, from Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. And may you all have a superb and the most beautiful and a wonderful afternoon.